Hey guys, let's talk about books. My name's Elizabeth, and in this series called 5 Reads, I talk about 5 things that I have recently read. It's really quite subtle, the name of this series. If you'd like to see more of these, I'm going to link the playlist, but also we've got a friend with us today. If you want to see more of these, I'm going to link the playlist, but also there's thumbnails so you can just skip ahead to what you want. Let's start. This cat climbing around my shelves is the reason that all my pop things, especially Siri, fall on the ground. I'm just going to move her out of the way so she's safe. Let's go with the books. The first one for this video is The Reader on the 627 is by Jean-Paul Didier, bookmark attacking me, Didierlaurent, which is a French author, and this is translated, I'm just looking up, the translator was Rose Schwartz. This was published in 2014, and I picked it up as part of a book club read in the Patreon for Lena Norms, who has raved about this book. We decided to pick up this book that she's always raving about. This is the story of a guy who works for a book pulping factory, and it's destroying his soul. And so on the way to work in the mornings, he reads pages that he's rescued from the pulper. And they're just random, they're just single pages, disparate stories that he reads aloud on the train for his own mental health. Starts out really like a dystopia with the descriptions of the pulping machine crushing and tearing and eating the books. There's a cat fully sniffing the camera if it starts to wobble. And then it evolves into a story about the power of language and how words and culture can save our souls. You want to hop out of the way because I'm speaking? Yeah? Thank you. I can see why Lena Norms really loved it because that's just the type of person she is. It's real Station 11 vibes in that way. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mantell is similar in a literal dystopia. It's post-pandemic, people's souls being uplifted through theatre. And this is similar with the power of words. It's very short, comes in at 200 pages, and I thought it was perfectly fine. I would probably get it from the library next time. Next up is another book club read, a different book club, different vibes. This is Chandran Zhang by Maureen F. McHugh. This was published in 1992, and I read it for the Sword and Laser book club. This is a world in which Chinese communism has become the dominant culture in the United States of America. And so we're looking at predominantly Zhang, Zhang, who lives in America. He's passing as Chinese-born American, so that gives him an elevated status in the world. And he's really just searching for a place. He lives in America, which is a colony of China, essentially. So he has a lower status there. He's a gay man in a world where it's illegal to be gay, so he has a lower status there. Always hiding, always trying to pass. And it's a story of him through the lens of this culture and colonialism, finding who he is and who he wants to be. And then there's other vignette stories of other people in this world. There's an ex-soldier who's currently living in a newly established colony on Mars, and her interactions with people who, that cat again, who have come up to Mars through different means, different status, different levels of wealth and privilege. And also another girl who is the children of Chinese-born Chinese who are exiled from China to America. So she has status and privilege and she can go back to China, but she's described as ugly. It doesn't say exactly what her physical deformities are, if there are any. But she's definitely depicted as ugly, and people viscerally react to her appearance, and so she has surgery to make herself pass as normal, and the implications of that for her as well. They're all woven together. Jo Walton, who wrote the introduction for this, calls it a mosaic novel, and I think that's a really accurate description. She would know. She's like the person who knows about sci-fi. So I'm going to take what she says pretty much as gospel. It was interesting. There was so much in this that was published in 1992 that you could definitely put in a science fiction today and still call it plausible future tech. I'm surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. Next up, which is ironically, I read on my Kindle because this is Cory Doctorow, The Internet Con, How to Seize the Means of Computation. This came out in 2023. He kickstarted this and made it available digitally, which is why it's on my Kindle. The call number for this is 338.47004, which is social sciences and then drills down to computer industry. Doctorow is a big proponent of anti-DRM. A lot of the book is about disestablishing monopoly. So the irony is I read it on my Amazon Kindle. Nevertheless, I just told you what it's about. It's a history of the way that the internet has been drilled down to basically 5 websites: Twitter, Reddit, that sort of, Facebook, places where you just hop between those 5. And if you need to know something that happened outside of those 5 sites on the internet, someone will screenshot it or link it. And it's just become a bit of a homogenous playground that we suffer through and don't enjoy so much as the old web, the early 2000s web, the 90s web. And so it's a history of how we got to that point, which is essentially the creation of monopolies. And even though he talks big in the blurb and says literally, this isn't a book for people who want to fix big tech, it's a detailed disassembly manual for people who want to dismantle it. Essentially, he says, we need to disestablish monopoly. That's what I got from it. But having lived through most of what's recorded history in this book, living through it in real time and then seeing it condensed into a history was really fascinating, because I could see every point where I was like, yes, Napster. And then you just get on with your life, and then another couple of years later you hear about Napster and Pirate Bay and all of that. But when it's put into a historical timeline and the context of how one decision informed another, you're like, yes, that is how the internet got shit. I see it. So would I recommend you to read it? If you're interested in that, do you need to learn how to disestablish monopoly? All we can do is argue for it. There's nothing that you and I can do individually except pressure government to work on it. And honestly, if you don't live in the United States of America, there's not much pressure you can put on it, right? Like, there's no way we could dismantle Facebook and Google from our computer chairs in Australia, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, glad to have supported that Kickstarter and glad to have read it, because everybody was talking about it and I was having FOMO. The Path of Daggers, which is Wheel of Time, Book 8 by Robert Jordan. Now, I tried to listen to this one and I ended up finishing it on my Kindle. I have a prop here simply because this is my husband's copy. The Path of Daggers was published in 1998. They're of their time, aren't they? They're of their time. I struggled with this one because it was mainly Rand fighting against an invading army. And I don't care. I mean, ultimately the themes are the struggle of power, about learning to be leaders. There's many of the main characters. Who did we have in this one? Rand, Egwene, Nynaeve, a bit, and Perrin, and they're all learning to be leaders and struggling with the responsibility in the good responsibility ways, but also the sheer responsibility ways. I can see why people warned me that books 7 to 9 are the Struggle Town ones. This is book 8, so I'm hoping the next one picks up, because 7 was good. Maybe 9 would be good, but this one, it took me a long time and I just didn't care. I just did not care. That's all we can say. So when I've read the next one, we'll see how I feel. It wasn't the worst one. The one that I've hated the most is still book 4 because of the fat phobia. But this one was just, Like, I can't go into it too much without spoilers, and you're not going to get to book 8 unless you're clearly interested in the Wheel of Time. But just the gender dynamics and the sexism and the racism, and it's of its time. I'm going to give it that. And we've moved on in epic fantasy from Robert Jordan, especially since George Martin's not finishing his series. All right. We're going to brush that off and move on. And finally, I attempted a book I would never ordinarily pick up for Australia September, which was an Australian themed September reading challenge hosted by Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. And I read Chai Time at Cinnamon Gardens. Now, I read this because both Scott, who was hosting the challenge, and Kelly, who you know is my fave booktuber, loved this. They loved it. So I was hesitant because I don't like literary fiction generally, but I picked it up. Pretty sure it won the Miles Franklin this year. It says it's a shortlisted. I'm pretty sure it won. It's hard and boring. I'm sorry, it was boring. This one was published in 2022. It's by Shankari Chandran, who's an Australian author of Sri Lankan background. I think she is Sri Lankan Australian. It started off well. It's essentially, it has all the trigger warnings, by the way. Like, I don't usually look up trigger warnings. I don't seek them out, but I really wish that I had been aware of the trigger warnings for this book. It is about Tamils living in Australia in a nursing home and running a nursing home. And so just generally the consequences of escaping war and having lived through war and the trauma of war, the consequences of being migrant families in Australia, and just the inherent cultural racism that we all have. Let's not even talk about the referendum. It's about white people not grappling with their inherent racism. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that, not grappling with that. There is a white couple in the book struggling with the death of their young child, which is where I wish I had the trigger warning. Racist violence, there's war violence, there's torture, there's the death of a child, and then there's just everyday Australian racists. So anyway, good times were had by all. For me, this was a book about learning to live with your trauma, because you can't run away from the traumatic things that happen to you. The reason I say trigger warnings about child death is because that is something that has happened to me. I've lived through the death of a child, and it's traumatic. And so learning to live with that, make it a part of your story, but not make it the thing that blinds you in your everyday life is a struggle. It is a process. It's a journey. It's all those words, but it is a thing. And I think this was tackled well until the pivotal moment where Australian racism comes to the fore, and then it's all about the frenzy whipped up by conservative media in Australia about racism, and it's not the fault of white people, and we just, why can't the not white people understand our point of view? And I say our as a white Australian. And it just got really banal, talking about the project and Twitter, and the whole framing story is the lady who owns the nursing home, and she's Tamil and writing stories under a white Australian female pen name who has become an Australian cultural icon. That's not a book I would ever read, and so I didn't identify or care about any of that storyline. But the trauma storyline I really dug, and I wish it hadn't gone into things like that media frenzy, because it was so ordinary. And that's probably the point that Chandran is trying to make, is that it's so culturally ingrained in us to be racist. Maybe take a step back and look at your self-love. Up until that point, I was enjoying it. The end resolution point was good, but that I don't even watch TV, so all of that was boring and I kind of skipped past it. Would recommend though, like I am still thinking about it even though I didn't really enjoy the process. So I also didn't finish the Australia September Challenge. This is the only one I read, but I'm glad to have read it. I'm still thinking through my feelings even though I read it a month ago at this point. Yeah, I think that's what I want to say about that. And that feels like enough because I think I've spent 10 minutes on that book. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you everyone in BookTube for recommending me things to read. I'm going to link the rest of the 5 Reads playlist wherever they will be. And also it's coming up to Christmas, so please recommend me things to put on my Amazon wish list for potential Christmas gifts from me to me because that's my fave. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.